Welcome to Get Your Mind Right, the podcast where merchant services, digital marketing, and personal growth collide. Tune in for real talk, fresh insights, and the motivation to level up.
Hey, good morning. John Johnson here with Get Your Mind Right, Boots on the Ground. And I have an extremely special guest this morning from Calabasas, California, formerly from Mississippi, Cliff Torrence.
Hello.
Cliff, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Cliff, a lot of my folks that listen here, they already know who you are. But for you folks that don't, Cliff is a nationally known figure in the merchant service industry, both in sales and in business development. So, Cliff, I appreciate you sitting in here, and my title for today's program is Building the Beast. And I want to find out how you got constructed from the ground up here.
Great.
Okay. So, Cliff, let's go back, turn the Wayback Machine to like your very, very first sales opportunity. What was that about?
I got a job at Radio Shack. Well, actually, the way it happened was I had a job at Zell's Jewelers, and they were paying me by the hour. I can't remember how much it was.
Working in a mall somewhere?
Yeah, working in a mall, and we were. The store was right beside the cookie store, so there's a lot of traffic in front of the store. Everybody going to the cookie store, yeah. So anyway, after I got hired in that position, the manager came through and he said, well, they've implemented now a 1% commission on everything you sell. Now, I'm 17 years old, and so I said, 1% commission, what does that mean? How does that work? So he explained it to me, and I said, so every time I sell something, if it's $100, I get 1% of that, it's $1,000? He said, yeah. I said, on top of my pay? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. So
this is a great world.
Yeah, so he tells me this, and literally he's not even got back to his office, and I see people outside the mall. None of them are coming in our store, but they're all going to the cookie store. So I would just go out and grab somebody out of the line of the cookie store and bring them into Zell's and start showing them jewelry. And started selling jewelry like boom, 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 boom. I'm putting the gold chains out, it's amazing. And the manager's like, what have I done here, And so, anyway, one of the guys I grab and bring in is a guy by the name of Rick Beasley. Now, he is the manager of the Radio Shack downstairs. So I bring him in and start showing him chains, and he's just like, well, what made you think I wanted a chain? What made you come out here and get me? And he starts asking me all these kind of questions. And if you knew Rick, you would know, you would laugh at that, because that's who he is. So anyway, he said, I'm not real interested in a chain, but I'm interested in talking to you about coming and working with me down in Radio Shack. I said, oh, okay. What are you going to pay me? And what they were going to pay by the hour, and I can't remember the dollars here, but whatever they were going to pay me by the hour was about half of what Zell's Jewelers was paying me by the hour. Zell's was going to give me a 1% commission, but Radio Shack was going to give me a 5% commission. He said, Cliff, you'll make way more money working with me, even with a lower hourly wage. Well, I thought, I just didn't really think, I didn't get the math. So I said, no, thank you. I'm just going to stay here at Zell's. Well, after I brought Rick liked his cookies, obviously, because I brought Rick into the store. I brought Rick into Zell's 3 separate times. On the third time, he said, look, I'm serious. You've got to come down here. Why don't you keep your job here and just work part-time with us and work with me, and I'll teach you how to sell. So I did. Took him up on that offer. Well, the first week I was there.
So what was the tipping point? Because you couldn't get past the salary and the increased commission. What finally got your head wrapped around this?
He started doing the math with me on the 5%.
Okay.
And so
here's how much you're going to sell. Here's what that's going to mean.
And I was like, what do people buy in Radio Shack? I mean, how many resistors do I have to sell at 19 cents?
Yeah, I resist the resistors.
Right. But that was back in the early days of the computer boom. Nobody had personal computers at home. And a lot of people don't know this, but the TRS computer was the very first computer made.
TRS-80, was that what it
Yes,
was? Yeah,
yeah.
you sold those.
Yeah, we sold those
Nice.
and got into the DOS-based computers, and I hit the sweet spot right there. So literally, these computers are $2,000-$3,000, some of them.
Which
back
should
in that
be
day.
10 grand now.
Right.
plus.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So once I figured out, hey, that's a product. But see, I knew nothing about computers. I knew nothing about any of the electronics they had down there. So I had to get in there and start learning and diving into it. And so, but what is really hilarious, I sold my first 4 or 5 computers, and I didn't even know where the on and off button was. Only thing. He brought me down there, and after just a few weeks of working, and I started making sales, I realized, I need to leave this job with sales and go to work at Radio Shack, and that turned into a career. I mean, I worked at Radio Shack until I left there.
So for our folks, some folks in the audience, this predates them, Radio Shack. But Cliff, it's funny because you and I talk about this. Radio Shack was an iconic American brand, and I would hate to guess what their advertising budget was, but there were if you needed a specialty part, like you said, a resistor earlier, and then they had some really cool audio and video gear. I mean, literally, Radio Shack had a corner on that market, and they had their own carved out niche.
Right. The CB radio boom.
I
got the CB radio from Radio Shack.
Yeah.
So and all the antennas and cable for your TV, and just, I mean, you would be constantly busy with that. So that would just bring people into the stores so you could talk to them about your products like computers and stereo equipment and stuff like that. So it's a great model. That's where I learned how to in that job, I ended up getting promoted to assistant manager, then became a manager, and before it was over with, I was running the second largest store in their company, worldwide, and it was in Atlanta, the Cumberland Mall in Atlanta.
Oh, so you
Atlanta,
moved
Georgia.
for
Yes.
the job?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I moved up that ladder pretty quick, and
So how old were you when you got promoted to that job?
I was 20 years old when I got promoted to that store. I turned 21 living in Atlanta. Yeah.
What a great time.
I was the youngest guy that ever held that position by far. The guy that had it from before me was a retired military man. He's probably in his mid-60s. So my age, I was different there. I was the youngest guy that ever had that position. But it was a really cool job. I learned a lot there at that job. I really literally had the red phone on the desk that came straight from the president's office. I mean, they would look at my sales.
The Kremlin phone.
Yeah. So we were in competition with the Radio Shack in Hawaii. I'm not sure if it was Honolulu or where it was, but it's where the military base is. And they sold so I was competing with one of our entities that was selling to the U.S. government. And I was selling to people walking through the mall. So it shouldn't have been a contest. We never beat them, but we got real close to beating them, So it was a lot of fun, very competitive, but it's where I learned P&L responsibilities. Radio Shack was very smart there.
So they pushed that down to the store level, and
100%.
you saw every item on that.
Yeah, so I became aware of stock. I became aware of inventory. I became aware of what happens when you move an item that's got shelf space that that really is prime, that we really need to be using it for something else. You learned how to control your payroll. You learned how to control your cost. It was really something, because at the end of the day, whatever profits were made, I got a certain percentage of that on top of sales commission, on top of salary. So it was a very good job.
Lucrative job.
Yeah, very, very lucrative job.
So talk to me about your training you got, because like at Zales, I'm not sure what their training program was, but I happen to know that Radio Shack really put a lot of effort into training their floor people.
They did. Rick Beasley, the guy, he became a lifelong friend, one of my very best friends. He's exactly 10 years older than me. So he became not only a sales coach for me, he really became a best friend and a father figure in some ways. He's been with me through my entire life. That he's my very first boss man, and we're still best friends.
Isn't that great?
I love it. And that's the camaraderie you can have in the career of being a salesperson.
Yeah.
You surround yourself with people like that. But Rick, we would have Saturday morning sales meetings every Saturday morning. And of course, the conversation all during the day was, "Hey, why didn't you sell that?" You should have sold that. So the philosophy is, if somebody is coming into the store, they came in to make a purchase. Whether they wanted, knew exactly what they wanted or not, that's our job. So, you realize, okay, he would make me do math on, okay, well, Cliff, that was a $1,400 sale. What's 5% of that? Tell me, out of that money that you should have made, what lesson are you going to learn? Because you just burned that.
Man.
Yeah, so you start...
Uncomfortable questions.
Yeah, so what happens is, if you start looking at sales that way, and the philosophy is, I should sell every single account. I should have 100% sales close ratio. This is what I do every day. I should be so good at it. That person that's in front of me, they probably hadn't made the decision to buy this in 5 years or 6 years or maybe ever. I should be so much more equipped to handle the situation than them. Mm-hmm. I just have to help them over the hurdles, Mm-hmm. So if you make yourself, if you're going to make $200 on that sale and they walk out, you didn't do it, that's a $200 lesson. What is a $200 lesson? So you start to analyze yourself. You analyze the sale. Where did I start to lose this? And you go back and you change behavior. And then what happens now the next time around, you've just made that $200.
Right.
See. So if that's the biggest issue I see when I'm talking with salespeople in general, is they blame their inadequacies and their sales on others, on the equipment, the price, whatever. I didn't make a sale because of this. You know what? You didn't make a sale because of you. That's the way you have to approach sales.
So here's one difference. You had a guy. Now, how old were you when you went to work for Rick?
I'm sorry?
When you first went to Rick, how old were you?
Oh, gosh, I was 17, 18 years old.
Okay, so you didn't have a lot of preconceived ideas, and you trusted him. He told you, this is how you do it, so you didn't have any kind of competing, non-productive thoughts to undo that. And then he was constantly, you may not have known at the time, he was constantly holding you accountable.
It's a mentoring process.
Yes.
Sales is like a martial art. You never stop learning because you're dealing with the human psyche. There's a lot of stuff going on in a sales process if you're doing it properly. Because really you're mind melding with this person psychologically. It's way more involved going on than what people think. And it is a martial art. You practice it, you do the forms, you prepare yourself, you surround yourself with the right people. That's a big key. You hold yourself accountable. It's all the things you do, the same things you do in martial arts, and it's a learned process. People think, oh, he's a born salesperson. There's no such thing. That's a developed skill set.
Does that slightly irk you when people say that about you?
It's people say it. And you just go, you have no clue what you're talking about.
Yes, it's the hardest thing I've ever, hardest endeavor I've undertaken in my life.
I never want to discount the doctors and the surgeons and the attorneys and all that, and all their education and things they do.
Right.
But I can assure you, for every hour they've done that, studied their art form, I've spent that same hour studying how I didn't make that sale. And what I've done in my career, when I lose a sale. And I've still got all these legal pads. I'd have them all over the place. It'd be beside my nightstand at night. They'd be in my car. And if I didn't make a sale, I would get out to my car and I'd write down exactly why I thought I lost that.
Cliff. So you and I have known each other about 10 years now, and I remember one of the first times I met you. You actually told me that, but your business model at that time is you were putting on zillions of miles on your car a year. It's some ridiculous amount. And you couldn't write it down. So what you said you would do is you had the discipline when you got in your car. I don't know if you remember telling me this.
Yes.
You wouldn't take your phone. You wouldn't take any phone call. You'd have to be driving your next appointment. And you would out loud go through, even when you got the deal, you would go through all of it and critique, okay, could I have done this better? Could I have done that better?
100%.
That left a big impression on me. You tell me that, by the way.
If you're not doing that as a salesperson, you really are, why are you not doing that? That's the most important step. I mean, how are you ever going to improve if you don't work on what you're bad at? I mean, it's a pretty common sense deal when you think about it.
You know what I'd say is we have a lot of people that are newer in their career out here, and the thing that struck me at the time now, and it still sticks now, is like, once again, folks, I mean, Cliff is, you talk to someone in merchant services, in any of our competitors, people never met him, they still know your name, right? And it stuck with me. Here's a guy that's dedicated to professionalism, dedicated to putting up big numbers, yet you are reflecting on every appointment, you're taking you through it, finding little bitty ways to get better in the margins all the time. And you haven't treated that as a destination. I know that's still a journey for you.
Oh, 100%. That's why I love sales.
Mm-hmm.
I love sales. I love the art form. I love, and the sad thing, in a lot of ways, it's a dying art form. We've gone to AI on everything. We're self-serve, and but you think about it. You go to a small town, you go to the hardware store, you walk in, you'll see true service there. They'll greet you at the door. They're going to bring you right to what you need, the parts you need. They're going to help you. That has so much value to it, and the more our world moves toward non-service, the more the salesperson, the true one, will be needed. So I think it's going to be a career that's going to even pay more in the future than it pays today.
Totally agree. AI cannot replace what you do.
100% cannot do it.
So Cliff, you were at Radio Shack how many years?
Radio Shack, I was there 5 years.
5 years, okay. Then you had a new opportunity come up, something completely different.
Yeah, so after running the store in Cumberland Mall and, did that and had that experience, part of being a manager was, you had to hire the vendors for your operation. So, of course, we needed our carpet cleaned, we needed our windows cleaned, we needed that kind of service, And through the different stores I worked at, I would hire these different companies, and these people would show up, and I would be afraid to leave them in the store for fear that something was going to get stolen. They'd come in with long hair and Megadeth T-shirts on, and didn't look like they had taken a bath, and the van was more dirty than my carpet. And I'm like, if somebody, and I just remember thinking, if somebody ever got in that business and did it right, man, you could make a fortune, because you're putting water and soap together, which is not very expensive, and you're charging a lot of money to do this, So through that thought process, I just couldn't let go of it. So I literally left a very high compensating job to start a carpet cleaning company. My father-in-law at the time said, I was walking with him on the beach, and he stopped. He said, have you lost he started laughing at first. He thought I was joking with him. Have you lost your mind? Everybody said that. And because I had no employees, I had no contracts. So I started the company. You know who my first agreement was to clean carpet for?
Radio Shack.
Radio Shack.
Yeah.
So I started right off the bat with a big account. And
so take me through this. How did you run the numbers on this, or even have any idea what was possible on this? You have no background in premise-based service work whatsoever.
I had none. I joined an organization where they have actual training, and you get certified in different areas. So I ended up becoming a master tech in that, got trained all the way up.
So you're like a licensee of this company?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was really, really important.
Yeah. Well, when I started, I didn't have that. So it was, I did it as I went. So I learned my lessons by getting knocked down and standing back up. You learn a lot of that. There were times I damaged somebody's stuff, I had to replace it,
Yeah.
But, the thing is, my dad always told me, he said, son, and my dad was a man of few words, but Dad always told me, he said, son, a man will know more about you and how you handled your mistake than how you handle your success. And that has proven to be very true. Some of the customers I've had in this industry, which I've got customers we've had for 23 years, we've done their credit card processing.
Mm-hmm.
I've got customers like that have become friends. I've seen their kids get married, and I've seen them with, we've got a relationship. That's my lane. They give it to me. They don't ever have to worry about that. But most of these people, there had been a problem during that time. How we handled it as a company is why they will never leave us. It wasn't how I handled their everyday business, because anybody can do. You're not special by just handling your everyday business, man. What makes you special It's how you handle the problem, you know. And I tell people, you know, we've still got all of our original employees, John, except for like 3 or 4 of them.
You talking from consumer pay?
Consumer
Yeah.
pay, yeah.
20,
And
how many?
20,
years?
23 years.
23 years
2024, you know, so in today's world, I tell clients, look, if you want a litmus test on my company, let me give it to you very simply. We still have our original employees, 20-something years here. You know they're good people because they've been around 20 years. They're loyal people. So you know they're good people. So that should tell you right off the bat that the product we sell must be very good, because good people don't sell junk for 20 years, you know. So our product must be good. You know, it tells you that how the company deals with conflict must be very good. It tells you I'm probably a very fair man, because in 20 years there will be conflict with personnel, there's conflict with accounts.
Right.
So right off the bat, and the fact that we've been able to be the glue that sticks that together for that long, that's the litmus test you want to hear as a company. You're going to be joining a group like that. We're best in our lane, you know, and you know, it's how we did it. You know, it's how we still do it. You know.
So when you got in this, I mean, this is I know what this looks like. I've went through some of the same thing. You know, Cliff, it's like it's kind of like I'm going to jump in the deep end of the pool, and then I'm going to figure out how to swim once I hit the water.
Right.
That's what you did.
100%.
What was your tipping point?
You're talking financial?
Well, I mean, you know, you gave up a good job for no salary, no income. You're making mistakes. You're getting beat up. You know, or was it a series of things that happened that you figured this out and figured out how to be successful with it?
Well, I never really had a downtime in the business. I literally started it. I started off with the Radio Shack account. And I started going to apartment communities, and when someone would move out of that apartment, they would hire me to come in and clean the carpet. So my ability to sell became very important, because that's the reason why we made it, because I sold all these accounts.
So you're all this stuff you learned from Radio Shack, those were
100%.
transferable skills.
Right. And the profit and loss statement. You know, see that so I understood all that. I understood, okay, our product comes in at this price, we got
very important.
You know, so it was and then I had the skill set of sales. So, you know, that company grew, it did very well. And you know, we before it was over with, I was the first group guy that ever had 24-hour service on carpet cleaning. So we had a nighttime shift and a daytime shift. I ended up selling the Wendy's Corporation, so all their carpets for the entire Southeast was done by my company. You know, and I could just start going down the line of some of the national accounts we sold, and we would service these. Blockbuster Video was one of them. We had do the Blockbusters. So, and then during the day, we would use that same equipment to do residential. So we were using our equipment at night for commercial and janitorial, and we'd use the same equipment. And everybody else's vans were still during the night. I was making money on mine. So that was a big deal. Nobody had ever done that. And to me, I was confused why nobody ever saw that opportunity.
They don't want to work that hard.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, the money's out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like gold. You got to dig it out. You know, it's not just going to arrive at your doorstep.
Yeah, it ain't going to dig itself
up. Yeah, but
up.
it's there. It's there. So, you know, we did real well with that. And through some of the national accounts we ended up getting and the relationships made there, that got us, we were swimming in a pool with a lot of different high, you know, development type people. So some of the people that we got attention with were these developers that actually go in and do turnkey work. Like if all the students move out of this dorm after this semester, all the new students are in less than 2 months. So you think about it, this whole entire dorm has to be painted, clean, janitorial services. And I don't know if you've been to one of these dorms after these kids leave it, but it is a disaster zone. I'm telling you, words cannot even describe how some of these kids would live.
No, I know.
So we would go in, and I had the carpet cleaning contract. Well, carpet cleaning is the last thing you want to do in that, because you want to get it painted, you want to get it cleaned, and then you want to go in there last minute and clean the carpet. So I was always waiting on these other contractors. Well, we had a timestamp. So these guys, the painters, were always keeping us behind. I mean, and finally we just have to go clean the carpet and get ahead of them and go back and re-clean it possibly if they got something on the carpet.
Gotcha.
I finally just went past them. And the ownership there saw me do that one year. And he said, Cliff, you're the only contractor that's ever gets this thing done on time. You sometimes can get it done even earlier if you're not waiting on people. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I want you to do the painting in our building next year. I said, I don't know anything about painting. He said, Cliff, I'll buy all of your equipment. I'll pay to get you trained. I'll even hire some of your people, some painters. But I know if I put you over this, I won't have to worry about this anymore. So I got in the painting business. So we started doing the painting. And then now we're waiting on the maid service. So now you know what happened next. Well, Cliff, just take over the whole project.
Mm-hmm.
So before it was over with, we would do these dorms. We did them for all the major colleges, okay? And I went and made these cells, you see. After I had the ability to do the work, I went and made the cells, of course. But, you know, we would do the complete turnkey. So we would go with a group of 40 to 100 employees to one location, and we would completely retrofit that thing in less than 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and on top of that now I still got my night shift running back and all the facilities. So I was buying equipment, we had vans, it was amazing.
How many painters did you have work for you?
On each site we would have anywhere from 20 to 40 painters.
Oh
typically.
my goodness.
And then we'd have all of our, and see, part of the
These were all salary people?
No. I did the pay thing much differently. So what I did is I took an average unit, okay? We know that unit may have 6 doors, okay? So I had a guy, and your job is you do nothing but these doors. If I find a door that's not done properly, I know whose job this is. Because I learned real quick with painters, they blame it on everybody else. So I said, we're not playing this game. You're doing window sills, you're doing doors, you're doing these walls. And we had their names, they signed off on it, and we would knock out as many in a day as we could. So we'd be a group of about 20 of us would show up in one site. We'd be out there in like 2 minutes, and I'd time us. All right, you do the math real quick. We have 1,000 units, we got 30 days. If you can break the math down on us, and we'll go, all right, we need to be doing 10 of these, an hour. And you'd know if you're ahead of schedule, below schedule, you'd know that. So we got real good at that. And, so I'm running this company, doing this, and a lot of my payments are coming in with credit cards. And, the credit card group of people was the shystiest group of people I ever dealt with in my life.
And you're paying them all this money and getting nothing in return.
In the sales process, this will cost you nothing, and then it would come maybe 5% of your net.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that going, my goodness, you know what? If somebody ever got in that business that wasn't a shyster, they could do really well at it. Same thing I thought about carpet cleaning. And you know what happened? I ended up getting the credit card processing industry. And just like carpet cleaning, when I started, I knew nothing. I started this, knew nothing. Got beat up a lot.
Now, so wait a minute. So when you got into telecom, you were also doing credit card on the side then?
No, what happened with the telecom is that was a short-lived moment. So my boss, Rick, at the time, he left Radio Shack the same year I did, and he started building cell phone towers.
Okay.
And Beasley Tower is the name of his company.
Well, he made a lot of money doing that.
He started doing that and ended up, through those relationships, owning an AT&T store and then having another store. And Rick just recently sold all of his stores, 150 stores, I think, a few years ago, and he's retired and living a life there in Tupelo, Mississippi. And so Rick went that path. I went the carpet cleaning path. When these paths, Rick and I are always talking. Well, man, I just closed this deal. Well, Cliff, I just put in 2 towers, and we would talk and. Through our friendship, well, part of that was, there was a new startup in Mississippi that's a cell phone company called Suncom. Well, Suncom was, like I said, it's a brand new startup. They needed their retail side developed. They needed their outside sales team developed.
This was AT&T?
AT&T. Mm-hmm. So when it started as Suncom, it wasn't AT&T. It was on the AT&T rails, and they always knew that they would sell to AT&T.
Okay.
That was the whole
That
plan.
was the purpose.
Yeah, right. So at that time, they marketed under the name Suncom, but it was AT&T. So anyway, Rick contacted me and said, Cliff, really interested in talking with you about getting involved with us in this thing. So, they were going to hire me in as a person that would develop the outside sales force for AT&T. It would be a contract work. During this time, I was getting some very, very nice offers on the purchase of my carpet cleaning company, TPS. Torrence
Because you had contracts, you had recurring services.
Yes, right.
Gotcha.
So we had
infrastructure.
Yes. So we were being looked at really hard for a purchase, and I felt like it was probably going to happen. And it did. And at that time, I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I went to work with Rick again and the Suncom group. And they wanted me to start as the development manager, more or less, for outside sales. Mm-hmm. They had already built somewhat of an infrastructure and some organization, but it was just not. I mean, it was a flat tire. It was just not happening, and it was dead. And they wanted to hire me as the manager for that, or director for that. And I said, no, I really don't. I want to start as one of the outside sales reps. I want to be a rep first. And that went all over Rick. He didn't want me to do that, but I did it anyway.
So what was driving you toward that?
Because I needed to understand the sales process. If you're gonna manage somebody in sales, it's unfair if you hadn't been in that position, because you got to understand the position. You got to understand. Part of that position is understand your competition.
Gotcha.
If you're really trying to sell, you know what you're up against. You got to understand that. You got to understand the equation of how you interact with that particular client that's trying to make the purchase, the psychology of the sale. You got to understand all that. The more of that knowledge of the foundation of that job, the more I understand as a manager, the better I can manage somebody, because I understand what the fallacies are.
So the tension here was Rick knew who you were. He knew your background. He understood the business. Mm-hmm. He said, you're ready to step in this role today, and right. You go, no, I'm not. I've got to learn this at a foundational level.
That's right.
Okay.
And
so how'd you win that argument with him?
Well, I didn't win it. I was just bullheaded, and I refused it.
This is the way it's got to be.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. And so we,
he didn't like that, did he?
He didn't, but he understood it, and he respected it.
Okay.
That was the main thing. He knew what I was doing. I did that, and literally went into that department. No one in that department had made quota in over 2 years. Now, it was 40 phones. I still remember these numbers. There's 40 phones, outside sales lines.
Now, wait a minute. That was one rep.
One rep
doing 40 lines.
40 in a month.
That was a record, or that was
no, that was the quota.
40 a month.
Quota, and none of these guys had hit quota in over 2 years, maybe longer. None, unless they made a big sale of some sort and they got like 80 phones, and then they would coast for maybe 6 months where they'd hit quota again. It was just, the numbers were terrible. It was non-successful. And so I went in my first month, and they're running all these different things. I started, literally the very first client I sold is I went to Chili's, and I went to the bar, and I sold everybody a phone at the bar. This is a true story. And they had a family plan, and on the family plan you could get up to 7 phones.
That's right.
Dude,
for this low price.
I had quota my first day at work. None of these, and I'm not even kidding with you, none of these guys had hit quota, and I'm baffled. I'm like, what the hell?
So you're eating free chips and salsa, sitting at the bar making money.
Yeah. So, but the thing, why are these guys not hitting quota?
Mm-hmm.
So I go back, and they're just camped out in the office.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking golf breaks, or they're
long lunches.
They're not working, man, because the product is sellable.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously,
mm-hmm.
This quota, they were thinking they were being mistreated because they didn't hit quota. And a bunch of people with bad attitudes and wrong thinking to get together. And the more they talk, it's 10 of them together, the more fortitude they give into their negative thing that's going to do nothing but hurt them. They need to get out of that. Surround yourself with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, out of that group of salespeople, I was only able to keep one of them.
Wow.
The
they were
thinking,
all ruined.
Yeah, the thinking was so stinking.
Yes.
You know, that I couldn't even fix it. You know, we just had to remove it. You know what I mean?
Thinking was stinking. Well, you know, once again, the problem these guys had is you're a teenager, you didn't know anything, you were coachable, you got really good coaching, you didn't have any of your own, you know, cockeyed thoughts that we're going to be unsuccessful competing for this, and these guys all did. Right?
100%.
You know, who's this new guy? Oh, he got lucky, or he's Rick's buddy. That's why he's getting these deals, etc. Yeah. They could not make the change. They couldn't pivot.
Let me tell you, John, what happened was I was getting, so they had a pay plan. So I had my AE salary, you know, and I had a commission, and then you hit quota and your commission goes up. So you had like bonus, then double bonus and a hyper bonus, but it took it up like 2 levels. Well, my first month, I sold so many phones that I went outside their pay plan. They didn't have a way to. I went outside what they could pay. So they had to develop literally what are we going to do when a guy hits this many phones. I did like 120 phones my first month, you know, and so they were like, that's like double quota. Wait, that's 3 times quota. So they started paying me like that.
That's good on them.
I was making more money as a salesperson than what if I had taken Rick's offer as the director of that department.
Now he created a new problem for himself.
This is a true story. So literally, the director that's over that, literally, I'm pulling in more than he is. In some cases, double, you know, off this pay plan. So, long story short, they moved that guy along, and I ended up taking the directorship, and then we developed that, and that was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed that, you know, and it only lasted about 2 years. You know, it was a contract type job. And,
okay.
So you know, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing that.
So before we pivot to merchant services, I know that's the next step on your career train path here. I want to talk about your background a little bit, Cliff, about when you were a kid. You've got a long history in martial arts and mixed martial arts and fighting. How'd that get all started with you?
Well, we were a very competitive family.
Mm-hmm.
All of my dad's side of the family were Marines, so we were a military family.
Okay.
So we were a very disciplined group. My dad was not somebody you messed around with. I mean, you just didn't. You know, Dad was a man of very few words.
He could back it up.
He never graduated high school. He left in 7th grade because he had to go to work to help his mom and dad. He had 7 brothers and sisters, and you know, he became a welder, and he was very good at his trade. He took a lot of pride in his work. You know, the cool thing about my dad, I have zero memory of my dad ever being home sick from work. Now, think about that for a second. I have no memory. So my dad he got up every morning at 4:30, like clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be home every day at 6. And my mom would make him his lunchbox and his thermos, and he'd go off to work. He'd come back, and, you know, he'd put football on. That's what he loved upon. And that was my dad, and you know, he was very disciplined in what you do, you know. So we had our lanes, and everybody understood them, and if you got outside your lane, you know, there were consequences.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't like those consequences, you know. So that's where I was raised and where I was born. So, you know, your word became something important.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because my mom and dad grew up. They were poor, rural farming country kids. My mom especially. I mean, she was pretty much poverty level. She grew up in. But what you didn't do was not work, right? And even when you were a little kid, you know, you're 4 or 5 years old. They got plenty of tasks for you to do on the farm. And my mom and dad, that never ever left them. And your dad was the same way. I mean, he was wired to do this.
Right.
Couldn't do anything else.
Right. Yeah. Mom was a nurse. So, you know,
hard work again.
Yes. So we grew up in a house like that.
Yeah.
And we were a competitive family, And my
Yeah,
dad,
like not doing chores wasn't an option
oh,
for you when
absolutely,
you were a kid.
yeah. I was the kid that, would help mom clean the kitchen at night, and so I have a love of cooking. Before it was over with, I would clean the whole kitchen, and some of the meals I would help mom. I'd say, Mom, I've got it this time, and we'd tag team, and, so it was a lot of fun, and, so that there's growing up in a house like that, it's cool. And you learned, we were poor growing up, if the stock market crashed, it didn't affect us at all, man. If milk went up, it did. Why in the world did milk go up a nickel?
Killing us.
Yeah. I will trade those years for nothing, because I learned how to live happy in those years, and I've made good money, and you got to learn how to be happy in both.
Mm-hmm.
If you can be happy in both, then you're the richest man in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that learning how to be happy in both literally is a lesson that we are having the opportunity to learn every day we live on this planet. Because it becomes, what I'm learning is it becomes less about me and more about how Cliff can help you. It becomes that.
Yes.
How do I build
servant's
this
heart.
man? Yes. How do I build this man?
Yeah.
In the Bible it says the humble shall inherit the earth. Those are the words of Jesus.
Yes. Yeah.
So it is.
It's people. People forget this too. Is that they perceive Jesus came to be worshipped and be to king of the earth. No, it was the opposite of that. He was here to sacrifice, help, and teach. It was all about the service.
Mentoring. We should mentor the people we're around, which tells you something now. Think about that. If you're going to mentor somebody, that's going to make you even sharper on your own skills. You're less lazy if you know people are watching you. I thought I was working hard. I didn't really start working hard until my kids decided to go to work with Dad in this business. Then all of a sudden I've learned all the things I'm not doing right.
Yeah.
My kids can tell me real quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They know you better
I know
than
what
anybody.
that's like.
So it is. So it sharpened my skill sets, and my kids went, because the last thing I ever want to do is mislead one of my children. So it makes you analyze everything now that you're doing.
Yeah.
All those rough ends you used to have, you want to polish those off. You want to be shiny pretty for your children.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking to me earlier about your dad and being in the Marines, and you look at him through these, still the big eyes of a 5-year-old Cliff, right? And there was a time, and then when I became a father, I don't know if you dealt with this, it's kind of like, okay, well, this is a new relationship. And there was one day I realized, no, my kids look at me the same way I looked at my dad, right? And you can enhance that or you can spoil that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about the martial arts. How did that come about?
Well, Dad was, and my mom, because my mom worked in the ER. And at one point, we lived in Louisiana, down in Metairie, Louisiana, and that's where she worked in the ER. She saw a lot of people come in, with injuries, and you can imagine. Mm-hmm. So Mom was and Dad both were real into, hey, you guys, you need to learn how to defend yourself. It's almost like swimming. That's the way, and when you think about it.
And your mom came up with this.
Yeah. Mom and Dad, because Mom had seen people come in that couldn't defend themselves.
Okay. So when your dad talked about his training in the Marines and all this all resonated with her.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, my dad wasn't a Marine, but we're from a family of Marines. All of his brothers were.
Gotcha.
Dad never went that path.
Okay, but they both saw the value of this.
100%. Mm-hmm. So we got into it pretty early. I think I started when I'm not quite sure, 3rd grade, 4th grade, I believe. My brother, which is you're younger than me, he started at the same time. Mm-hmm. And we went through it together, and we got, we studied Taekwondo, we studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I can't speak, and, it was, back when we started doing it, literally, I don't even remember belts. What I remember was, you had degrees, but I don't think we didn't even use the word belt back in that
I don't
day.
know if you're aware of this, but that's a sign of a very good martial arts gym. And the more focus there is on belts and promotions, generally that's a reflection of a poor quality gym, right? So what did you start learning first? Was it Taekwondo?
Taekwondo. Jiu-Jitsu
Okay.
didn't come along until I was in high school.
And let me guess, you lost interest in Taekwondo at that point.
Well, I realized that Taekwondo, that skill set is wonderful, but you need more. If it's a street fight, there are no rules. Nobody cares about your forms.
Right.
If they get you on the ground, Taekwondo's not going to help you. When they get you on the ground, what happens? And he may be bigger than you. So what martial art does that? Well, jiu-jitsu does. And so if you're gonna be really smart and you want to learn it, plus I saw value in that. It's an incredible art form, and what if you employ that, whoever's got you is going to have to let you go.
Yes.
Yes. If they ever get you. So, if you can lock them down like that, it's amazing. And even the weakest person, leverage is powerful. And, that's why I understood leverage. It's part of the sales process. You have to go in with leverage. If you don't go into that equation cocky, almost with attitude, not toward them, but cocky in your ability, you know what you're doing. I've got leverage here. I'm doing this 10 times a day. You've not been at this seat in 5 years. And you understand who I am. I'm going to study you. I'm going to study your buying movements. I'm going to lock in on whatever the thing is. I sense that it's going to help me close this. And, it's best for you just to go ahead and just slowly give up because, it was, and that's the way almost the attitude should be. If you're at the top of your game, you will have that confidence, but you can't get there without doing all the forms, and that's just like in martial arts. You're not going to get there unless you're disciplined. This is a daily thing, and it becomes a mindset, I can't tell you how many times I'm with my wife, and she says, Cliff, can you just cut that off? and I'm like, what? I'm sorry. Can we just not talk about business or sales strategy or the objection? I'm like, well, I'm trying to get your opinion. Cliff, I don't want to talk about that anymore.
I'm out of that.
I'm telling you, it just happened the other night before I flew here. She's like, Cliff, you're fixing to be gone for a whole week. Can we not talk about business tonight? And, so bless her heart, I'll put her through that. But, she's a salesperson too. So that's one of the reasons the love is there. We have that. She understands our language.
Yeah, she's Laura's definitely passionate about your business. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So I've got a wrestling background, right? And I interviewed this guy once. It was even before my kids was born, and he made, I think it was the 1988 Olympic judo team, right?
Wow.
And I had zero background in martial arts, and I always wondered kind of how real this was. It felt like there was some snake oil involved in it, right?
Right.
And I had this conversation with the guy, and he gave me great advice. He said, "You get kids along." He says, "I'd recommend you get them in something like judo." And he goes, "Not just because I did it." He says, "Because this is practical. It transfers to other sports. It's about gaining leverage and balance, and it's practical because it's about taking. At the end of the day, it's about taking your opponent down to the ground." He said, "Now, at some point, your kids may want to segue into jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is about submitting and disabling your opponent."
Right.
And so I said, "Well, what about karate and striking and all that?" He goes, I do that, and I've had training in that. He says, but I would push that off till later on. You do not want that to your kids in the self-defense. That should be their last line of defense or offense, striking opponent." He said, plus, if they know these other things, they'll pick up the striking very, very quickly. He said, but put that on the back end.
100%.
So I remembered that, and then he even told me, he's the one that told me that if you're in a gym and all they're talking about promotion stuff, he said, that's the knockout.
Right.
So it's literally the first gym I went to. I talked to the guy. Oh, the other thing he says is that you want a gym that competes. He said because that's your ultimate test of your skills. Right. You think you're great in forms and practice on that. Well, we're going to see what it's like when you got a referee and it's you squared off with someone else, 100%. Right?
Yeah, when you're in front of that person, it's intimidating the first few
Yes.
You're like, oh my goodness. And, it's not, we're not sparring, we're actually fighting.
Right.
So it was interesting. And back in those days, early days, we didn't have pads. I mean, people got nose broke. I mean, there was always blood.
Yeah.
I mean, every time. And someone always was hurt. So nobody was crazy hurt, unless it was an accident or something. Nobody was abusive. But, it was a competitive fight, And to a lot of people, it's hard for people to understand a competitive fight. But
it is. They think they know what it is, and they don't. I'll give you a good example of this. So I have a wrestling background, right? So my kid's judo coach. He's got I don't know. I don't know what his belt in jiu-jitsu is, but he's good at that. But he's also got the judo, right? So first time it was after practice. I said, Jimmy, let's roll around on the mat. See what you got. So I always thought I get on the ground, I can handle myself. Cliff, I mean, it was terrible. It's the worst beat down, and I mean, he didn't hurt me or anything, but I don't know. I'd go maybe 15 or 20 seconds before he'd submit me. He'd have me in a choke or an ankle or an arm lock, and it was. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, man, if I got in a fight with this guy, it's how bad does he want to hurt me, right? And so then it's like, all right. So show me how to defend this, okay? Well, here's what you're giving up here on the arm. So, okay, here's how you not do that. Well, then now he's choking my neck, okay? Well, here's how you defend that. Well, now he's getting an ankle lock on me. And it was just amazing at how humbling it was for me I thought I knew this much, but someone with a skill set, I mean, I was helpless. I could probably, if I'd had a club or a baseball bat, I'd have been all right. But short of that, well, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have a cocky guy come in the first day of a jiu-jitsu practice. He gets humbled very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So tell me about your fights. What was your first competition? How old were you?
As far as we competed from the very first day we're there. We did spar. So it was a monthly event, that we're fighting. So what would happen is
in a refereed competition.
Right.
You're talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every month, we're doing this, and you go to, it'd be a Saturday event, and you'd be in possibly 3 fights in that one day. So it'd make a man out of it. So, and sometimes maybe even more than 3, but I think we average probably 3 when we do that. And, depending on it could be a tournament type event. It may last 2 days. But back in those days, it seems from memory, it seemed like we fought the same people like over and over and over. So it just wasn't a lot of people doing that during this time. Because this has been, this would have been in the 70s, So, it wasn't the network like you have today,
right?
And they didn't have all the regulations that you have today. There's really no infrastructures. The birth of the sport probably more or less happened during the 60s and 70s, I would imagine.
And the thing I noticed too, my kids were all 3 national level judo players, right? And what I found out very quickly is a lot of parents weren't cut from the same cloth as your parents. Right, like my daughter. I remember the first time we were in a tournament, and she literally got thrown full force on her head. And they were going putting her down. I mean, as a dad, man, that is hard to take. That's a hard thing to take. You don't want to see your kids, especially your daughter, sign up for that. But on the other hand, that's character builder, right? I got to stop this person from doing this to me.
Right.
So here's my question, and this was something I was concerned about because I saw this. Because where my kids also worked out, the mixed martial arts guys would practice there. And I've noticed this, and I even knew this before we did this because I've known people that were in boxing and all this. And it's odd, Cliff, how this translates to life and how it doesn't. It was an inverted bell curve, right? Because I saw people that were in these combat sports, and that became their life. Right, and they really didn't have much going on outside that. And on the other side of the bell curve, you had these kids, and I mean, you could go right down the line. They were very successful careers because they took that and
Right.
and rather than, okay, I'm just going to focus on, my fighting skills or my jiu-jitsu skills the rest of my life, that discipline, they translated that into a career.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? I mean, there was like no one in the middle. They're either like people that, like their parents been, or when I wish I'd never got into this, or like in my case, all three of my kids, I can tell you how that combat sports background has formed them positively as an adult. What's the difference there?
Well, like I told you, my dad was a man of few words, but the words he had were very defined. And one of the things my dad would say to us, and it's because my mother was a nurse and he never finished school. So he said, son, you see what your mother does every day? You see what I do every day? You're either going to work neck down or neck up. And what happens is, if you stay in that fighting,
Mm-hmm.
you're every year that goes by, you're getting older. Your ability to compete at some point starts to go down. You're building character, you're building yourself, you're building your art form, but you don't want to make a living there forever. Really, because you're working neck down, you're physically. But you should, if you're, and that's what my dad's intention in saying this is.
Yeah.
Be smart with what
Gotcha.
you're doing. Don't get stuck, because the job I'm in, even though I love what I do, but it's a factory job. I go do the same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do the same thing every day, you want to be working neck up. You don't want to be doing this.
I understand what he meant by that now. So your mom and dad, they really understood this for what this is that we're building mental toughness. This is not an ends to itself, but it's building the Cliff Torrence beast. This was really a puzzle piece to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you. Let me throw you a curve here, John. So, my brother and I, he's a year younger than me. My brother was much more the athlete than me. And he's still probably got some state records in Mississippi right now today. We were raised in the same house. But I just recently lost my brother to drugs.
Mm.
We were taught the same thing. He's just 1 year younger than me. So, the point I'm trying to make here is not all seeds fall on fertile ground.
Mm-hmm.
People have to have an attitude of being able to be taught. They have to be submissive to their teacher. They have to be submissive to that subject, and they have to give it credence. And, it's not just the message, and it's not just the parent. It's the recipient too. Now, the real question is, how do we fix that? That is the enigma, because, you can have the perfect organization, the most well-oiled machine that's on its game, the best ever. But if that person's not willing to submit to that, they're worthless to this, if that makes sense. Because all they're going to do is pull this down, So what happens is that it pulls. So if you have too many of those people in your organization, it will literally pull your bar down. You have to be careful of that. That's why all new hires in my company, I'm not the one that hires them. Our whole group does. It's like you're in a massive interview.
So I'm putting this all together now, Cliff. So there were a couple things. Is like you and your brother, you had the same sort of mixed martial arts training, but I'm guessing your brother didn't get into some sort of business development or sales type field. So part of the big difference for you is you did, and you took that posture as I'm a student and I'm humble and I'm gonna submit myself to this guy. And he's going to teach me how to do this, and then all your fighting skills fed that directly.
Right.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You still reflect on that? You see how that shapes you as a grown man now?
I was one of those people that got COVID, and
I remember.
And it was a 2-year ordeal for me. I still have a lot of problems from it. And, I was in the hospital for a month. They told me I would die 3 separate times and actually wanted me to call my wife and tell her, I'm like, I'm not calling my wife and tell her I'm dying. I'm not going to do that to her. She can find out tomorrow. So I was faced with that, got out, and literally when I got out of the hospital, I was hooked to oxygen with a tube, and I had enough distance to get to the restroom and to the kitchen. I had to sleep on the couch. I didn't have the strength to go up even 1 or 2 steps. I'd pass out because I had so much damage in my lungs. So, it was a trying time. So I've always been a workhorse and never really been sick, and and then this happens, and during that time it was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, and I believe that I believe that the year 2025 especially has been a shedding year for me. It's literally where things have become more focused for me for whatever reason. I think my children coming into work with me has prompted that, because I've worked my tail off to send them to college, spent a lot of money to send them to college so they could get off my payroll. But they got out of college and got right back on my payroll, man. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? I thought I was rid of you. We want to work with you. So, they come on board and, they got all these fresh ideas, which is cool. So now I'm like, I'm going to have to learn something new. Come on, man. Don't make me do something.
I'm through all this.
I'm trying to retire right here. Well, that ain't happening. So that became pretty obvious to me, and started putting things together and realized that, my life was really out of balance massively, because I'm a workhorse and because I've got 7 children, and that's a lot of college, that's a lot of cars. So I thank God I'm a workhorse, and we'd be bankrupt. So I see something. I see a hurdle that I have to get over. There's no question. I got to get over. So determination is part of who I am as a person. So I'm extremely determined, and thank God I am. But anyway, so I'm driving 1,000 miles an hour at that, and it's just something that you have to do.
Yeah, I remember, Cliff, Alan told me, I knew you had COVID, but that, like for me, that meant a sniffle, right? And then, of course, people like you, it was a calamity. And Alan said, hey, Cliff's in pretty bad shape. You should give him a call. And I called you. And I called you like 3 or 4 times because you were I didn't know the extent of it, right? But Alan said, no, if he's feeling up for it, he's got his phone on, and like we were about literally like 30 seconds of conversation. You go, John, I got 84 tiles in the ceiling in this room, and I like, oh my gosh, I'm like, man, this is bad. This is bad.
Yeah.
So
I remember telling you that now. Well, I'll tell you, John. So these people would zip in to different things and zip out. People were you felt like you were, literally I'm living in a bubble.
Yeah.
And, so you don't see people. So the person to my right and the person to my left, I knew them by their voice and their cough. And the guy to my right, when I first got in this room, my first recollection, because a few days I wasn't even conscious, but I would hear him coughing. He would start coughing, and it's very painful to cough. It hurt. But that's the nurses, everybody would start clapping and encouraging you because you need to cough. It sounds good, but you got to get rid of this.
But it's like a knife in your chest.
How to get that out of your lungs, you got to cough it out. So they would cheer you on, so you got to know people's cough. And you would just be laying in bed going, oh man, I know I need to do that again, but I don't want to do it. Determination becomes the thing, I'm determined to get out of here. So, but anyway, long story short, My nurse came in one day and I had heard this man's cough, and I was asked about him. She said, well, he didn't make it. Lady to my left, she would say, all she would do when she started feeling really bad, she'd go, oh, doctor, doctor, doctor. And she would just say that over and over, and you'd be laying in bed going, I'm fixing to go crazy. And then all of a sudden, I don't hear that anymore. And I ask about her, well, she didn't make it. John, I was the only one on that wing of the hospital, buddy, that lived. The 18-wheeler that kept the bodies was outside my room. I could hear it running 24/7. Unbeknownst to me, my wife many times came and sat under my window, man, and prayed for me. I didn't even know she was doing it. And through that, when I got out of that, I said, you know what, man, I'm gonna die. What I mean something. I've worked my whole life. So what happened to me 2 years ago, around 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm having a very vivid nightmare. I'm crying in my sleep. Laura is up. She's up like this in the bed, and she's just watching me, and finally I wake up and I'm crying. She said, Cliff, what in the world? I said, babe, I just had this terrible dream, but it's a wonderful dream. She goes, what? I said, you know the story, the children's storybook, The Giving Tree? John, you know this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I dreamed that I was the tree. And I've been chopping off branches and leaves and giving them to my children and to friends and to organizations and to this and to this. At the end of that, bottom of that totem pole, Cliff is not even on the list. I've done nothing for Cliff. I've lived my whole life and done nothing for Cliff.
How did Laura take that?
She started crying. She said, excuse me. She said, Cliff, you're right. What are you going to do about it?
That's what you needed to hear.
She is. She's a spunky thing. What are you going to do about it? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to start on it tomorrow. She said, it is tomorrow. And, so what I did is I said, I got out of bed and I hurt when I got out of bed. I'm just achy, and I'm like, I'm the most unlimber thing in the world. So the very first thing I did is I joined a stretch class. Now you talking about painful. I was back, so I joined this stretch class. It started out 1 day a week, then it turned into 2 days a week, and I'm getting limber now. I'm getting some of my agility back. Now I feel like, I might want to ride my mountain bike a little bit more. Because it's not so painful to ride the bike. So I start riding now I'm starting to get my cardiovasculars. So what turned into that, it's a full-fledged training regiment now that I'll do, every week. My wife does it with me. My children are on it. And we're getting healthier and physically, because that's part of your balance. So what I realize is Cliff, for Cliff to be stable, it's the same philosophy as, the oxygen mask comes out, you put yours on first before you put on someone else's.
Yes.
Wait, I didn't put mine on, I'm dead.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't help you, now you're dead.
That's a great analogy.
So I have to I realize, all right, I need to take care of me. So how can I do that? Look at the schedule I got. Oh my God, there's no time for Cliff. Now, again, you got to be dead. If you believe this, and I believe that this was a message from God, that Cliff, you got to change your, if you want to move to being a happier person and having a happier existence, and even the people around you it will affect, you got to start taking care of yourself. You almost died, and you would have died, and look what all this time you've given up. That's precious. You could have been, but you don't have. You're out of balance. Take the blinders off. Let work be in its lane, but you take care of yourself. So what I did is I looked at my calendar, and you would have looked at that and thought, well, there's no time for Cliff. Well, yeah, there were. I can carve out the hour of 6 in the morning to 7. I'm never doing anything for the family at that time. I'm not doing anything for the business at that time. Hey, I do something for Cliff right there. You know, now what that means is I get to bed earlier that night, the night before, you know, or whatever I need. 'Cause that's going to be a commitment. And you know, I started doing that. So I do most of my stuff in the morning before my kids wake up. You know, before I really get to work. I found that time to be very to just be very fruitful, so I can take care of me. I can take care of the physical need. Because if you can be the brainiac of the world and have all the problems solved and make all the money, but if physically you're unhealthy, you're not a happy person. You know, you're just not. So you need to take care. So you got the physical you have to take care of. You got to take care of your work. You got to take care of those two lanes, and you got to take care of your spiritual side, man. It's a part of you, just like your physical is, and that's what people will spend part on their spiritual, but they won't spend time on their physical. It's both of them.
It's all connected.
It's temple of the Lord, man.
Yeah.
You know, so you know you should be giving it equal time at least. So what I found is the more balanced I get, like the tire spinning on a car, the more stable everything becomes.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You know?
You know, now, so, you know, 10 years I've known you, you've always been in reasonably good shape, but I mean, you're peak condition now, the 10 years I've known you, Cliff.
I am.
And you're beating Father Time right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, buddy.
Well, and you know what I've noticed too is it's like when I'm in good shape, like my relationships are better, I'm better at my job, you know, my spiritual life's better because I'm stronger, and you know, like thinking and contemplating all that, those are things that burn calories. And when your body's strong, you know, you can redirect that energy towards that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've found too that when I'm actually working out, I've got a trainer. So let me stop there and tell you about that. In all of my disciplines, part of what you have to learn is what is my weakness. You got to understand what your own weakness is. My weakness is I need an accountability partner. I need that. I need a wingman.
That's your trainer.
100%. I've learned that Cliff, if I leave it up to myself to get up at 6 in the morning to go do that, and I've got nobody I'm meeting there, Cliff might not do that.
Yeah.
But if I've given my word, and I'm on top of that, I'm paying this man. I'll tell you, I'm not going to waste money and lose my word too. You know, I mean, that's like a 1-2 punch. So I'm in it, man. You know, and I'm going to be committed to that. So
Yeah.
I know that I need that step. Now, my wife says it's a crutch, and she's like, "Well, you don't need." I'm like, "I do. It's what I need." And
It's what works for you.
Well, you know, Rick Beasley was that. You know, Alan Knoll, he's that. You know what? You're that. I'm surrounded by people that I respect, and you know what? I'm the dumbest guy in the room when we're all together. That's definitely the group. I'm with the right group. See, I'm the one that lowers the bar. Y'all just pick me up. You see. So you know, you know, so you got to feed all three parts. And, you know, the more you feed one that gets ahead of the other, the more you're starting to get unbalanced. You're not spinning smoothly. And what I have found, you know, we've had during the last few years, of course, from being out, it's been tough. You know, the company, we haven't had the growth that we expected, and, you know, it has affected us. But this past year, or 2 years, we've been building. Because I came off the road, part of me being balanced is I can't fly somewhere in the United States every Monday morning or Sunday, be gone all week, fly home on Friday. I have that. That's not. If I'm going to have balance in my life, that schedule doesn't fit for me to have this many other responsibilities, you know, a wife and children, and friendships, you know. So we had to come off the road. So our whole business model had to change, and you know, we had to. There's been a lot of work on that. But I will tell you, our sales funnel right now, John, is so. I've got more in my sales funnel than the past 10 years combined in my company, sales funnel. Some of these accounts, we've got 3 accounts that process north of $1 billion, one that processes north of $3 billion. We're meeting with these. We've got valid meetings. We've already closed several of these stores. You know, I've got a call tomorrow with a group of 20, and these guys are doing 250 million in processing, you know. So our sales funnel 2026 should be and will be the biggest year my company's ever had.
Well, you know, it's funny you're mentioning all this, Cliff, because, you know, we both know 2023 was pretty tough year for consumer pay. You know, and then you know, you really focused on your mind and body the last 2 years. You picked it up in 24. 25 was a great year for consumer pay.
Yeah.
And now you said you've got your biggest pipeline you ever had. You know, you're posed for wild success in 26.
Yeah, and we built some infrastructure. You know, we part of what happened, if I'm coming off the road, so I'm no longer the workhorse. So, you know, how do I replace myself on the sales floor? How do I do that? Well, you know, I'm an abnormal person on the sales floor. You know, that was my skill set. And, you know, I'm pulling in, you know, back in the day, 90, 100 deals a month by myself. Well, what does the average salesperson in an organization bring you? 10 deals a month? Well, if that's the case, you know, I need 10 people to replace me.
Right.
So when you look at that, common sense tells you that's a business model change. For me to be off the road, that's the only way this is going to work, because the math is still the same. I have to make the same amount of money. I need to, you know, if I'm going to have growth, you know, so you can do the math on this easily. So we realized we need to have about 50 strategic partners is what we call these relationships. And that's to fill the plug that it took for me to pull out of the field.
Right.
We've done that. We've achieved that. And they're strategically all over the U.S. So we're positioned this year to do some big stuff with these guys. So now that I've got that, well, how do we manage these people? How do we motivate these people? So I had to build some infrastructure there. So we built team managers now into our group. So Catherine has a team of strategic partners. Dean has so I've got 4 guys that are they build their team. And then I compensate them with their own profit and loss on their team.
Okay.
So now they're
back to the radio check
100%, because we should be paid by our productivity. Productivity is measured by net income. You know, so what you're bringing to the equation has to make it down here.
Right.
You know, you can't. If we're not doing that, then things not going to work.
All the top numbers are vanity.
We're going backwards.
Yeah.
We're losing money there.
Yep.
You know. So I wanted to build that, so we built that, and we've worked it, we tested it, and there's been bumps there. There's been strife there because you wanted to build this where it compensated people based on what they're bringing to the table. You know, so how we're doing those offsets on residuals and how we break that down, we've done that where it's fair for everyone, and everybody feels comfortable with what they're getting. Nobody likes their deal, which is probably the sign that it's a good deal. So, you know, we've got that built in there. So and also built into that is I've built in a fund that per account that comes into the new, how we're breaking this down now, we're building in a $35 fund for support. So as we grow their teams, they're also growing a merchant base that requires service. That's what that $35 is going to be building.
So you're kicking that into a kitty that will all go to the sport.
100%.
Gotcha.
So when we get ready to make the new hire, we're ready. You know, because you also can look at your call center and know based on how many merchants you're getting this many calls, you need a new person to start fielding that. You know, and you know the more you're putting in that room, the less the call times go down, and happiness is happy. You know, so but it's all math. You know. So.
Well, Cliff, I got to tell you, we're getting close to the end here. I literally didn't even get 25% done what we talked about. But
I'm sorry I've talked your ear off.
No, this has been fantastic, and this also gives me the segue to invite you back. I'd love to have you back on the show. So I know there's going to be a lot of salespeople are going to hang on every word you said here. I really want to give you the last word. So again, I've got a younger audience as far as tenure in business. What's just some advice you'd give for these folks that want to do what you've done in the business?
We have, I would say, the biggest opportunity in front of us right now in this industry probably that we've ever had. Back when I first got in the industry, credit cards, were 25% of that person's wallet, meaning 75% of everything else was cash and check, so we were a very small segment. We've now, just through organic growth, we're now in that wallet, we're 90, maybe 95% of the wallet now, So we had growth. Even if you were dumb in this business, you should have had growth just because people started using their credit card more.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, it's built in.
So that whole deal is fixing to flip again, and it already has on the other side with our buyer's choice and cash discounting programs. Every one of my children have gotten in this business. They grew up around the table from 4 years of age hearing about credit card processing. When they came to work, they're already trained. Literally. So they've heard this, and I've encouraged them to get in, and they see this. So what's happened is less than, I don't know the actual number, you may know it, but a very small percentage of the merchants in the U.S. are on this program. I would say less than 5%. It's a very small number.
Still a lot of growth.
That means we have a 95% harvest on a product that we are making 4 to 5 times more margin on. This is a time of harvest. If you can't see that, then you really don't understand what you're looking at, because that's what's out there. And it's all merchants, so it's not one vertical. So you don't have to be a specialist at POS. You can make a fortune just knowing how to sell tow companies.
Mm-hmm.
You could just learn one and learn it so good.
Pick one random vertical.
Find what you're interested in and go sell those companies. Go have fun. Mm-hmm. There's an opportunity right here that is like none I've ever seen. And not only that, we're going to this. So technology is a fun time. There's always new technology, new gadgets, new stuff. Who knows what's going to happen with our industry with AI? Mm-hmm. I mean, really? So think about that for a second. If you're a young person, you've got this dynamic market you can go harvest, but also technology's changing. So every time there's a new change in equipment, there's a new opportunity for new income. Think about how quick things are going to change now. The concept right now in our industry is just give it away free. One day, somebody's going to stop that, and we'll get smart, and we'll go, you know what, hey, we should be paid for our services. Our equipment shouldn't be a loss to us. It should be a profit center. They need our technology. See, I'm saying what I'm saying now is we should be selling our equipment. Why should we give that away? I mean, really, they know the merchant knows it costs us money.
Well, so I had a whole section, Cliff, to talk to you about value proposition. I've always felt you've been a leader on that in the industry, but we'll save that for next time.
All righty.
So, Cliff, you've been a great guest. Again, I can't wait to have you back. For you folks listening, hit Cliff up on LinkedIn. He absolutely kills it on social media. And it's consumerpay.com. .net. Consumerpay.net. So check him out. Once again, Cliff Torrence. Cliff, appreciate your friendship. I appreciate spending time with you.
Thank you.
See you here on Friday on Mailbag. Get your mind right.